The streets of New York City glimmered under the soft glow of Christmas lights, their reflections shimmering on the wet pavement. Snow fell gently, blanketing the bustling city in a serene layer of white. Daniel Harrington walked briskly through the streets, his mind weighed down by the expectations of his family. Around him, families strolled hand in hand, their laughter mingling with the faint melodies of holiday carols. The festive displays sparkled, but to Daniel, they felt distant, a celebration he couldn't quite touch. Among the crowd, Daniel Harrington walked with a purposeful stride, his tailored coat pulled tight against the chill. A high-powered corporate lawyer, Daniel carried the weight of his family's expectations on his shoulders. The Harringtons demanded perfection, and he was no exception. Turning a corner, Daniel paused, his gaze falling on a young woman crouched by a trash bin. Her threadbare jacket and the dark circles under her eyes told a story of hardship. She was invisible to most, but not to him. Not tonight. Daniel hesitated, his polished shoes crunching against the icy pavement. He had passed countless others on the street before, but something about this young woman caught his eye. The determination in her movements despite the obvious hardship. She rifled through discarded items, her trembling fingers brushing against a crumpled sandwich wrapper. For reasons he couldn't quite explain, he felt compelled to stop. "Hey," he called out, his voice unsure against the sounds of the busy street. She froze. Slowly, she turned to face him, her sharp green eyes meeting his. Framed by messy auburn hair escaping from a knit cap, her pale face betrayed both weariness and defiance. "Not looking for trouble," she said, her voice steady but guarded. Daniel stepped closer, cautiously. He could see now just how thin her jacket was, the holes in her gloves, the scuffs on her boots. "Neither am I," he replied. "Are you hungry?" Her eyes flicked to the restaurant behind him, its warm, golden light spilling onto the sidewalk. "What do you think?" she said, her tone tinged with bitterness. He glanced at the bin where a half-eaten baguette teetered precariously. "Come inside," he offered, nodding toward the restaurant. "Have a proper meal." Suspicion flickered across her face. "What's the catch?" "No catch, it's Christmas," he said simply, holding the door open. The scent of roasted garlic and freshly baked bread wafted out, a stark contrast to the biting cold. She hesitated, her grip tightening on the frayed strap of her backpack. Then, as if hunger had finally overpowered her caution, she stepped past him into the warmth of the restaurant. Inside, the maitre d's' polite smile faltered as his gaze landed on her, but Daniel's presence silenced any objections. They were led to a small table near the window, where their unlikely meeting truly began. The clinking of glasses and low hum of conversation surrounded them as they sat at the small table near the frosted window. Daniel leaned back in his chair, studying the woman across from him. Her fingers fidgeted with the edge of the linen napkin, her eyes scanning the menu like it was written in another language. "Order whatever you want," he said gently, his tone warm but cautious. She set the menu down with a faint scoff, crossing her arms. "Don't patronize me. I'll get soup." Her voice was sharp, almost daring him to object. "That's fine," he replied, a flicker of a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "But you could do better than soup." "That's fine," he replied, a flicker of a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "But you could do better than soup." Her sharp green eyes met his, unyielding. "You could have left me in the alley." He raised his hands in mock surrender. "Fair point." The waiter arrived, and she ordered curtly, her gaze barely lifting. After the waiter left, an uneasy silence settled between them until Daniel leaned forward slightly. "What's your name?" "Sophia," she said, her tone clipped. "And you?" "Daniel." Sophia nodded, her expression unreadable. "So, Daniel, why'd you do it? Bring me in here, I mean." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Maybe I wanted to prove something to myself, that I can make my own choices, not just follow expectations." "Expectations," she repeated, her voice tinged with irony. "Must be rough. living in a world where everyone tells you how great you are." Her sarcasm stung, but Daniel smiled faintly. "It's not as great as it looks." Their food arrived, and for a while they ate in silence. Between spoonfuls of soup, fragments of her story emerged. A failed art career, a family torn apart, and the streets that became her home. In return, Daniel confessed his frustration with his controlling family and the hollow expectations that ruled his life. For the first time in years, both of them felt seen. The next morning, Daniel stood by his office window, the city skyline stretching endlessly before him. His coffee sat untouched on the desk, growing colder by the minute. He couldn't shake the image of Sophia, her guarded eyes, the way her hands trembled as she held the soup spoon. By noon, he grabbed his coat and headed out, ignoring the buzz of his phone. When he reached the alley behind the restaurant, she was there, sitting cross-legged on the icy pavement with a sketchpad in her lap. "Sophia," he called, his breath visible in the cold. She looked up sharply, clutching the sketchpad to her chest. "You again. What do you want?" He crouched to her level, the chill seeping through his tailored trousers. "I need your help," he said, his voice softer than she expected. His words hung in the cold air, and for a moment he hesitated, as if reconsidering what he was about to say. She barked a laugh, the sound hollow. "My help? That's new." Her tone was biting, but there was a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "I'm serious," he insisted. "My family is forcing me into a marriage I don't want. It's not about love, it's business, alliances. I can't do it." "So why tell me?" she asked, folding her arms tightly across her chest. "Because," he said carefully, "if I'm already married, their plan falls apart." Sophia froze, her brows furrowing as his words sank in. "You want me to marry you?" she asked incredulously. "Temporarily," Daniel clarified quickly. "Just for a year. It's a business arrangement, nothing more." Her laugh this time was sharper, cutting through the icy air. "A business arrangement with someone you found digging through a trash bin? You sure you don't need your head checked?" "I'm serious," he said firmly. "You'd have a place to live, food, clothes, whatever you need to get back on your feet. And when it's over, I'll make sure you're set financially." Sophia stared at him, her grip tightening on the sketchpad. "Why me? You could pick any woman in this city. Why the homeless girl?" "Because," Daniel said, meeting her gaze, "you're honest. You don't care about money or status, and you have just as much to gain from this as I do." She chewed her lip, torn between suspicion and desperation. Finally, she extended her hand. "1 year," she said, her tone firm. "No more, no less, and I keep my independence." "1 year," Daniel agreed, shaking her hand. Sophia stood in the center of Daniel's penthouse, her frayed backpack slung over one shoulder. The space was immaculate. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of New York City's skyline, and the polished hardwood floors gleamed under the glow of modern light fixtures. A grand piano sat in one corner, untouched and pristine. "This is excessive," Sophia muttered, her voice echoing faintly in the open space. Daniel smirked as he set his keys on the kitchen counter. "It's just a place to sleep. For you, maybe," she said, her tone dry. She wandered into the kitchen, running her fingers along the cold marble of the island counter. Everything felt too perfect, too sterile, a far cry from the streets she had called home. "You can make yourself comfortable," Daniel said, his hands in his pockets. "This is your home too. For now." Sophia shot him a skeptical look, but said nothing. Instead, she slipped off her boots and placed them neatly by the door, a habit born of necessity rather than manners. Over the next few weeks, they settled into an uneasy routine. Sophia spent her mornings sketching by the window, the cityscape providing endless inspiration. Daniel worked long hours, returning late to find her cooking simple meals in the spacious kitchen. "Soup again?" he teased one night, leaning against the counter as she stirred a steaming pot. "It's cheap, it's warm, and it's mine," she retorted, without looking up. Their differences became increasingly apparent. Daniel, accustomed to luxury, struggled to understand her fierce independence. Sophia, wary of pity, bristled at his occasional attempts to make her life easier. Yet, in the quiet moments, over shared dinners or late-night conversations, they found common ground. But the fragile peace didn't last. Daniel's mother, Evelyn Harrington, and his ex-fiancée, Olivia Barrett, were relentless. Suspicious of Sophia, they dug into her past, uncovering the scandal surrounding her father, a disgraced financier whose actions had left her penniless. One evening, Evelyn confronted Sophia in the penthouse, her words sharp and cruel. "You don't belong here," she hissed. "Do you think marrying my son erases your father's crimes?" Sophia's hands clenched into fists. "I never asked to be here," she snapped. When Daniel returned that night, Sophia was packing. "I can't stay," she said quietly. "Not like this." "Sophia, wait." "No," she interrupted, her voice trembling. "I deserve better than this." And with that, she walked out, leaving Daniel standing alone in the echoing silence of his penthouse. The streets of Paris were alive with energy, a stark contrast to the heavy silence Sophia had left behind in New York. She walked briskly along the Seine, her fingers brushing against the strap of the old satchel slung across her shoulder. Inside were her sketches and music sheets, remnants of a life she was determined to rebuild. Sophia had enrolled in a prestigious music conservatory, a dream she never thought possible until now. Days were consumed by relentless practice, her hands flying across piano keys as she poured her emotions into every note. Nights were quieter, spent sketching the cityscapes she admired from her modest apartment. But despite the beauty of Paris, her thoughts often wandered back to Daniel. She could still see his expression the night she left, confused, hurt, but unwilling to stop her. His words echoed in her mind, "You don't have to go." Yet, she had to. She needed to find herself outside of the shadow of her father's disgrace and beyond the confines of Daniel's world. Back in New York, Daniel sat in his office, staring blankly at the contracts on his desk. His mother's sharp words and Olivia's smug satisfaction echoed in his ears, but one thought drowned out all the noise. Sophia. Her absence gnawed at him. He missed her sarcastic quips, the way her face lit up when she was sketching, and the quiet strength she carried despite everything. For the first time in years, he began questioning the life he had built. Defying his family for the first time, Daniel formally ended his engagement to Olivia. The confrontation was brutal, but the relief that followed was undeniable. He also pushed back against his mother's attempts to control his life, asserting his independence in a way he never had before. Months turned into a year, and though their lives were separate, Sophia and Daniel both grew in unexpected ways. Sophia's music blossomed, and Daniel found new purpose in running a pro bono legal program for struggling artists. Yet, despite the progress, they carried a quiet longing for one another, two lives connected by a moment neither could forget. Christmas 2 years later, a cozy restaurant buzzed with the clinking of glasses and the murmur of conversation. Candles flickered on each table, casting a golden glow, while a Christmas tree, decorated with crimson ribbons, stood proudly in one corner. Snowflakes clung to the windows, hinting at the cold night outside. Daniel sat alone at a corner table, swirling his glass of wine. The untouched plate of pasta in front of him had long since gone cold. Although Brenda, his closest confidant, had suggested going out for the evening, it only deepened the ache in his chest. It had been 2 years since Sophia had left, but she was still on his mind. A sudden melody filled the restaurant, soft and haunting. Daniel stiffened, his breath coming in short gasps. The piano notes seemed to speak directly to him, weaving a tale of longing and hope. He turned slowly toward the small stage in the center of the room. There she was. Sophia sat at the piano, her head bowed, her fingers dancing lightly over the keys. Her black dress shimmered faintly in the candlelight, and her intense concentration made her seem almost untouchable. The melody surged, filling the room with a raw, emotional power that drew all eyes to her. When the last note rang out in the air, there was silence, heavy, reverent. Then applause erupted, warm and heartfelt. Sophia stood, flashing a small, graceful smile at the audience. Her eyes scanned the room and stopped. Daniel was standing, his chair pushed back, his expression a mixture of surprise and disbelief. For a moment, time seemed frozen. Sophia stepped off the stage, her movements purposeful. She stopped in front of him, her voice steady even as her chest shook. "You came." "I never left," he replied, his voice low but full of emotion. The snow fell softly outside as Sophia and Daniel walked side by side, their steps slow and deliberate. The city glowed with holiday lights, casting shimmering reflections on the icy pavement. Neither of them spoke at first, the weight of 2 years apart lingering between them. But as Daniel reached for her hand, a warmth spread through the cold night, a silent promise of a new beginning. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "I spent 2 years waiting for this moment, imagining what I'd say if I ever saw you again." He glanced at her, his voice steady. "But now, all I want to know is what happens next." Sophia stopped, turning to face him. Her green eyes, once so guarded, softened. "That depends," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you ready to try without conditions this time? Just us?" His hand reached for hers, warm against the cold. "I've never been more ready." As the church bells chimed midnight, welcoming Christmas Day, they walked forward together. The future stretched before them, bright, uncharted, and theirs to shape.